What up, Marsh Pod? Coming to you at the conclusion of opening day. We have finally a full slate of basketball action to recap, to experience, and it was a good one. We're going to get to the two games that aired live. That would have been a reigning Trays win over Bad Boys and a Bay Area Breakers really impressive win over Best Coast Ballers. But before we get to that, we'll do a quick hit from the other three games from around the league that took place. Gotham 5, they went and they took down Beasts of the East. They won 82-62. Initial instinct on that one, I guess it was actually 4 games. Cayenne Anthony, you love the dominance off the bench, 24 in 12 minutes, 10 of 15, very aggressive. Not surprised to see that, but that's a guy that's going to be making an impact, and he immediately did. Reason to be alarmed by Mackenzie Mbako, only taking 4 shots, number 1 guy in the league, but small sample size at this point. He could turn around and have a great game, but it's still kind of surprising. You would expect a guy of that caliber to be a little bit more aggressive to kick it off, and he just wasn't. But it didn't matter because Gotham 5 is deep. Cayenne Anthony was great. Aaron Lovejoy. Syer Matthews, an efficient 5 of 7 for 10. I mean, they had 4 guys end in double figures with another 2. Keontae Dior and Mugen Williams both at 9. So there's depth in Gotham 5, and I think that's one of the themes that we're going to see from some of these top teams that we're not going to see from some of the bottom teams is the depth of talent. Beast of the East is a perfect example of that. They don't have that go-to get-a-bucket star, and it really showed. Lose by 20, never really competitive in this game. They won one quarter, it was the 4th. They won 20-18. Otherwise, they lost by 13, 6, and 3. So the game was over right off the start because they just don't have a guy you can turn to. Fareed Redmond, leading shot taker with 14 points. He had 12 points, 5 of 14. Elijah Hawkins took 11. He ended with 14. There's just, you look at it, you don't feel confident in how you can get these pieces rolling. That's got to be a cause for concern for Beasts of the East as you try to project that one out. Beyond the arc, they fall to Lakeshore Drive, 95-71. For Lakeshore Drive, I mean, they've got a great guard rotation. Zay Gore, 19 points, 8 of 8 shooting. Norman Nation leads them with 25 points and 5 assists. Drake Harvell, kind of a pedestrian, 9, 6, and 4. 9 being the pedestrian part, 6 boards and 4 rebounds or 4 assists from your guard is certainly gonna fill that up. But they just got a deep team. They've got multiple options that can go out and get it. Beyond the arc, they don't. Tyson Simpson, 11 of 13 for 24 points with 9 rebounds. That's great, but this is Glory Tate 2.0 for Beyond the Arch. They have one guy that they can rely on, and beyond that, a whole lot of questions. Dino Ahern, again, you kind of wonder, what are we getting out of you? 9 points. That's it. No assists from your guard. David Duffy, same thing. We were asking him last season, what is he going to do next to Glory Tate? The answer is, again, nothing. 2 of 7, 4 points. He had 6 assists, but that's basically, dishing down to Tyson Simpson. Daniel Ori played well, 12 points, but beyond that, this is just it's just a roster that's filled with what are we going to get from you type of performances. Cascadia beats Europe 78-72. Cascadia, I said on Tuesday's pod, what's a story to watch? What is Cascadia going to bring? Were the signings good ones, or were they just so condensed that we thought they were good? And the answer is they were good ones. Jason Todd, 14 points. Montel Cage, team high 22. Chris Owens with 17. This is a good team. This is a good guard wing rotation team. That's a positive in this one. I think the big positive for me, though, is Arthur Lattimore in the bench. Or excuse me, from the big spot, 11 points. Dan Levin, not too aggressive offensively, but you overall like that they both were able to kind of hold down the paint. But they need to be more aggressive on rebounds, and that's going to be the story for Cascadia. You can't have Chris Owens at the wing, Montel Cage at the guard, and then Brendan Romine coming off the bench be your team leaders with 4 rebounds, or Jetson Halliday also had 4. You got to have more production from the big rotation spot for Cascadia. Meanwhile, for Europe, I think this is a positive in that they were close in this game despite Henrik Vekic scoring 4 points in the first 3 quarters, and they trailed by just 5 entering the final frame. If my math is right, 7 entering the final frame. Then he has 18. They scored 26 points as a team in the fourth quarter, and they hung around. That to me is a positive if you're Europe. All right, ATLians, Queen City Kings. Queen City it's going to be common. I said this. There's not a lot of bench. You've got Norvell DeJean-Jones. He had 16, but he had to do it on 20 shots. You've got Sky Durant. You got Deontay Odom. Those are 3 good guys in your starting rotation. After them, though, what do you have? And the answer is nothing. Braxton Schuyler, 25 minutes, 8 points. You want to see more aggressiveness out of a starting guard. But coming off the bench, you've got Kevin Higgins, 12 minutes, takes 11 shots, goes 2 to 11. That's not going to get it done. And there's a reason they lost by 13. Also, part of the reason they lost is because the ATLians have that type of depth. DeMario Duval, 19 in 24 minutes. Isaiah Rose, 6, 7, and 2. A good productive 26 minutes from the big. And they went with a 2-big lineup in terms of big minutes. D'Angelo Muto, 23 minutes, 12 boards. And that's kind of what I'm talking about when you need a big to come out and play well. He did that. And then Adam Mahmoud, 13 points in 13 minutes, 5 of 5, 3 of 3 from deep. There's some depth. There's some reason to be positive. All this can change, right? We're 1 game in. You could turn around, Adam Mahmoud could have 13 minutes and he could have 2 points because he goes 1 of 5. But the initial response or the initial kind of returns is that depth is going to matter, and some of these teams clearly are lacking it. All right, moving to our 2 live games. First off, great calls by both Ilava and Biron. Energy was high for season opener for both sides, but just a quick shout out to those guys. I thought it was, broadcasts were entertaining, which is, I guess, really all you can ask for, right? So let's start with our first game, the Reigning Trays versus the Bad Boys. This was, and I had spoken to Coach Lytle after the game. I thought he stuck with the decision to double team, I think, a little bit longer than he should have. And he agreed that he might have left it to that in for a little bit too long. But it had kind of differing results. The good results were that they were forcing Bad Boys to take a ton of threes that they just happened to miss. You look at, somebody like Nathaniel Garcia, who ends up going 6 of 11 from deep, but he had a stretch where he was just ice cold from beyond the arc. Garcia's a good 3-point shooter. Leaving him open for that long is, 1, why they built a big lead, because he just struggled. And then 2, this game got competitive because he started getting going from deep as these open looks just continued to come. So the decision to double team, it was good early, and then it kind of backfired because the wide open shots that they were getting, Bad Boys, just continued to fall or started to fall. Lorenzo Phenom, tough night, 4 of 12. He had a decent run there that I thought he could have gotten going at the end of the first quarter as a result of those double teams. He hits a 3, gets a couple layups, and I think he starts the next quarter with a layup. He had 9 points in a pretty short period of time, but that was it. So if you are if you're Reigning Trays, it wasn't a terrible approach, but against a team that's going to be shooting better threes, the double teams are not going to work. And this is not to say that Coach Lytle expects to do that, and he said so after the game. But they'll need to have some alternate approaches here to kind of figure out how to get teams out of rhythm. That being said, on the offensive side for Reigning Trays, they were getting basically whatever they wanted. The Bad Boys defense was absolutely non-existent. And it's why, despite getting a ton of open looks in every quarter, they scored 87 points. Bad Boys scored 87 points. That would have been good enough to win all but one of these games because Lakeshore Drive had 95. 87 points, and they still lost the game. The reason is because their defense was atrocious. They were consistently allowing the guards for Reigning Trays into the paint. Kevon Jackson, 24 points, 11 to 16. Japhett Towns, 23 points, 11 to 19. And that's on 1 made 3 between the 2 of them. They went 1 of 4 from deep. They accounted for 3 of Rating Trey's 4 misses from deep. The other one being Asher Benedict, who attempted 1-3 in his 6 minutes off the bench. They went 104 from downtown, yet they still combined for 47 points because they were able to get simply whatever they wanted. Bo Pagnotti Jr., non-existent as a guard defender. Nathaniel Garcia, non-existent as a perimeter defender. Samuel Balgas, non-existent as a point of attack defender. Aiden Weaver, the same exact thing. There was absolutely no defense on the outside from Bad Boys basketball, and that's why despite getting all of these good looks inside, they end up losing in a game that they trailed by 11 entering the fourth quarter. That's the problem right now for Bad Boys, is that they have no defensive identity. And the Rating Treys just took complete advantage of that. At the same time, I just thought the offensive approach by Bad Boys was awful. Yeah, the double teams came. Yeah, they got a lot of open looks, but then they were just taking open looks. So you're taking a ton of early shot clock looks. That's really a big reason why, along with defense just being atrocious, that's also why this score was so high, is because Bad Boys was taking shots with 15, 16, 17 seconds left on the shot clock because they saw an open look. They immediately took it, even if a guy was ice cold. James Jones Jr., who's a good three-point shooter, 2 of 4 from deep. He had a perfectly fine night. Ball would swing to him, wide open paint, doesn't even think about going. They've got to find a way to have a more diverse offensive attack. They shot 39 threes. They went 15 of 39. They were down big because they weren't hitting them. They made a comeback because they started hitting them, but they took 39 threes. Looking around the league, Rating Treys took 11. Cascadian Europe, 13 and 15. Lakeshore Drive and Beyond the Arc, 15 and 9. Beast of the East and Gotham 5, 11 and 13. And then AT Aliens and Queen City Kings, 10 and 14. They took 39 shots from deep. The only other team, and then the other game was the one we'll get to, Bay Area Breakers at 17. No other team took more than 17 shots. Bad Boys basketball hit 39. They're going to win games because they're going to get hot, or Rating Treys, if this is an approach they get, Rating Treys is going to lose games because teams shoot better than 38.5% from deep. But 39 shots, you're going to win, you're going to lose. That's why this game was competitive. Head to our nightcap. Bay Area Breakers. They beat Best Coast Ballers 84-75. The score, if you look at that, you say, wow, Best Coast, they hung around. They didn't. They did not hang around in this game. This game was close for a couple reasons. We'll start with Best Coast Ballers of why they kept it close, or why at least the score was close. Because they have really good guard play. Okay, they have really good guard play from Mikey Williams, Lace Darius Outlaw, combined for 30, 16 points from Outlaw, 14 from Mikey Williams, 8 of 14, 7 of 11. They shot really, really well from the floor. Reason being because they could get to the paint basically whenever they wanted. There was a real lack of point of attack defense from the Bay Area Breakers. They allowed them wide open runs. They allowed a ton of pick and roll wide open rim runs from Best Coast Ballers. Evangelos Mullins, 10 points, 5 of 7 shooting. Austin Ajvan, 10 points, 5 of 5 shooting. Those are your two bigs. That came in, and Lane Newman had 8 points in 22 minutes, 4 of 8 shooting. They allowed them to get into the paint whenever they simply wanted to, and that's why this game was close. Bay Area Breakers, if they shut down that pathway into the paint, this game is a 20-point win. But they simply had, much like we talked about earlier with the with Bad Boys basketball, Best Coast Ballers just had no point of attack defense. I apologize. Bay Area Breakers had no point of attack defense. That's going to be a problem. Now, the scary part of this is you faced maybe the best backcourt in SimWorld Hoops in Outlaw and Williams, and you still won by 9 points. Despite having really suspect defense. The reason is because offensively, there's simply very few things to stop Bay Area Breakers. They were phenomenal, and they have so many options on this team that they can turn to. And it's part of the reason why I said when we were predicting who could be the first or the new number 1 player in the league, I said it's not going to be somebody from Bay Area Breakers because they're not going to put up good enough numbers. Okay, Royce Anderson, 14 points. Ronnie Shanahan, 14 points. Those led the team. Trey Hyman, Caden Shipp had 13. Xavier Pope had 13. Royce Anderson could be the best player. Any 5 of those guys could be the best player in SimWorld Hoops, but they're not going to put up the gaudy numbers that's going to shock teams. That being said, Trey Hyman, 13 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, filled up the box score. Here's why I'm most concerned or most afraid of the Bay Area Breakers in terms of overall league. Now, I don't think Best Coast Ballers was a deep enough team to really give them a challenge. But I went through and during this game tracked what I would consider bad possessions. Possessions where little ball movement, bad drive into traffic, a lot of dribbling, just poor shot selection. How many times did they have bad possessions in this game? And I counted 24 times that the Bay Area Breakers had what I would consider a bad possession. Okay? 7 of those 24 plays ended up with points. Whether that was a made 3, a made 2, what have you. 7 of 24 Bay Area Breaker bad possessions ended up in points. 10 of those 24 plays came from bench players, including a real atrocious stretch by Blake Gillenwater to start the third quarter, where he pulled up after an extended dribbling to nowhere. He got an offensive possession where he had 2 offensive rebounds back-to-back, where it started on a pointless drive. Second play was a bad fadeaway. He still manages to get the offensive board for a second time and makes the layup. That's one of your positive makes. And then a awful bad drive that he then dishes out to a teammate that ends up with a contested layup. So Blake Gillenwater had 3 right off the bat. The other shots that you look at, 3 of them came from Trey Hyman, where it was, 2 of them, where we just ended at 3-second violations. And then Curtis London had a handful of ones where it was the same thing, dribbling into nowhere. This was a team that for 4 quarters had 24 possessions in which you wouldn't consider it a positive. That's just not true for other teams across the league. That's the concerning part. And they still ended up with at least 14 points out of those 24. I know some of those ended up with 3-pointers. This team is so well balanced, so well coached. Our biggest question for this team coming into the season was, are they going to be good enough? We saw them during the preseason. They were great during the preseason, but are they going to be good enough over a course of a game where you actually have to factor in bench players, factor in rotations, factor in coaching plays? Are they going to be able to sustain that? And the immediate answer is a resounding yes. Now, that's going to be put to the test as they play better teams, right? You're going to get their next game is against Showtime, okay? That's coming up on the 7th. That is a huge game. I will be on the call for that. I am very excited for that because it's going to be a massive opportunity for us to figure out both sides of that coin. Is Showtime legitimate? Is Bay Area legitimate? But the immediate returns from the Bay Area Breakers is that they are, I don't want to say much deeper than every team, but they're much deeper than basically every team. And there is an immediate line in the sand that separates them from good teams. Best Coast Ballers are a good team. They didn't look like it against Bay Area Breakers. That's a major, major notice set to the league by that team. All right, we got more games coming up Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday. Continue to tune in. It is exciting that we're finally getting some hoops, finally getting some answers to some questions that we've had, and we'll be back on Tuesday.